Why are you being so damn coy?
Dr. Crane, I can't
Olivia,
tell.
why
You
are
just
being
look
so
at that
deliberate?
damn tablet.
All right then. Oh, thank you.
Welcome, friends, new and old. We're back this week talking about Frasier, the 2023 revival series, Season 1, Episode 8. This one's entitled The B Story. Now, there will be some spoilers ahead, so consider this your last chance to duck out if those aren't for you. Now let's crack on with the show. Happy Thanksgiving if you're watching this the day it comes out in the US. If not, happy Thursday, or if you're watching this in the future, happy whatever day of the week it is for you. Episode 8. We're getting very close to the end of this season, and while I went into this episode fairly apprehensively, considering the Paramount Plus description had something that made me think it was going to be mostly a Freddy and David-centric episode, I actually found myself enjoying this a heck of a lot more than I thought I would. Now, the Freddy and David storyline is kind of playing co-leads with the Frasier storyline here, and I think that's partially responsible for the reason that this is called the B story. B as in the A and B plots, the A and B stories of the episode, not to mention B as in the flying creature with the stinger, because those come into play in this episode, and of course David getting a B on his exam in Frasier's class. So all of those kind of things mixed up together really lead this episode to being titled correctly, I guess, in my opinion at least, and it's very, very reminiscent of a lot of classic Frasier episodes as far as things getting out of hand, misunderstandings, things going too far, Frasier getting in his own way, David getting in his own way, and I guess potentially maybe a little bit Freddy getting in his own way. The Crane curse is discussed and called back in this episode, and that is definitely something that I like. The whole needing for these people to constantly try and endeavor to get the next best thing. If they level up in one capacity, that's never good enough. Not to mention the fact they need to compete with each other, but they also need to just get whatever that next step is. So if you rank up to level 99, that's no longer meaningful to you whatsoever. You need to keep going. And that reminds me very much of a lot of the old Frasier episodes, to be honest. But the one that specifically springs to mind is where they go to that spa. Originally, this being Niles and Frasier, of course. Originally, they didn't get an invitation. They steal Cam Winston's, and they keep finding these new levels within the spa they don't have access to. And they need to get access to these because suddenly the place that they are in no longer has any meaning to them because there's something better. There's this shiny new, the grass is greener thing going on, to the point where they eventually level up to the back alley in the dumpsters, thinking that the door to the outside is actually the best place in the facility. And I think that's kind of potentially a nice callback because this episode deals with bees. And if I recall, they got chased away by bees because they were covered in honey in that episode or something like that. I may be misremembering, but I digress. This episode was filled with so many interactions and misunderstandings that could potentially have an entire episode built around them that it kind of felt like, I don't know, longer than the 23 or 24 minutes it actually is. I know that normally sounds very detrimental or very bad. You don't want something to feel longer than it is. And I think that definitely worked in the benefit of this episode. Everything kind of worked together to the point where there's no downtime. You weren't skipping from story to story or scene to scene and really losing any momentum. There was just a constant kind of stream of misunderstandings and things getting way out of control to the point where I actually found myself laughing a couple of times. And I know that's like, well, duh, this is a comedy, you should be laughing. I don't actually tend to laugh out loud or have visceral reactions when I'm watching comedies. For the most part, like, I'll smile, I'll find things enjoyable, but I'm not the type of person who generally laughs out loud or finds myself uncontrollably laughing. And there were a couple of moments in this episode where I found myself chuckling a little bit, and I think that's probably a good sign that things were working for me here. And I think I found David to be the best I've ever found him to be here. I know I keep beating on that drum. I don't have anything against the actor. I don't have anything against the fact that they wanted to include this character in the show. I've just felt up to this point they were kind of floundering with him and they hadn't found any sort of real use or real inclusion for him. In this episode, they really kind of doubled down on having him be part of the family, part of the community, and dealing with this Crane curse and kind of playing upon a little bit of the expectations, especially his father Niles has on him. And it was a great conversation towards the end of the episode when Freddy and David had this heart-to-heart with each other, I guess you could call it, about these expectations that their parents and the Crane family and the Crane genes put on them.
That one lecture, I just walked out and never walked back in.
Because of the pressure?
Because I wasn't happy.
So while it wasn't necessarily a real super dramatic moment, it definitely added a little touch of something to the episode and something to this show that I think really makes it worth its own existence, if that makes sense. The Frasier storyline, typical Frasier from back in the day, bumbling through situations, trying to overanalyze and overthink a situation to the point that everything just inevitably goes wrong and he fails at getting what he wants spectacularly. Then he tries to fix it, tries to correct it. It fails miserably once again. While Eve wasn't all that present in this episode, you can't have every single character in every single episode really being the forefront, so I don't mind that necessarily. And Alan just kind of took a back seat, but when he was there, he was kind of utilized correctly. One thing I would like to point out is it seems like they're leaning heavily in this season or in this series into drinking, alcoholism, altered states of consciousness, that sort of thing. I don't know if that's intentional or if I'm just picking up on it a little bit more, but this episode dealt with drinking in more than one occasion. Alan has been a heavy drinker in the past. The Founders Society had that guy who wanted to go get high with them. We also see in this episode that Freddy gets more intellectual when he drinks, so it's more like the Freddy of old, or the Freddy that Frasier wanted, only comes out when Freddy gets his inhibitions down by drinking or being in an altered state of consciousness, something along those lines. And I don't know if that's an intentional statement by the show. I'm not knocking it too much. It just seems like, for whatever reason, potentially because one of the main components of the show is a bar, so they're kind of leaning into that. I don't know. It's just something that's sticking out to me. Overall, I found this episode to be a heck of a lot more enjoyable than I thought I would going into it. While I really did enjoy the Founders Society episode this season, this one might take the cake as being my favorite, specifically because they had so many examples of those classic Frasier things, and we dealt with some of the characterizations of specifically Freddy and David in this episode, and even Frasier himself. So I really liked that because there was a little bit more meat on the bone than some of the sort of thin plots we've had so far, not knocking the show as a whole. And it kind of felt like everything was working together in a way some of the episodes this season haven't so far. The only thing I felt was a little bit was that speech David gave trying to convince Frasier to give him an A on the paper. It just felt like it was a little overacted and not quite genuine. And I'm sure that was actually supposed to be the intention behind it, but it was just a little too overplayed that it kind of took me out of the episode as a whole. That's probably my only real downside of the entire episode. Everything else kind of worked for me, and maybe I'm just kind of settling into the show for what it is, and I'm not going into it with the preconceived expectations of being exactly like the original Frasier. I'm just more falling into it for what it is now. Or maybe it really is doing something special and I'm just kind of tuning into that new frequency. One question this episode brought to the forefront of my mind: do you think we should see more of Frasier actually teaching in his class? Obviously, that would require bringing in a lot of the side characters, extras, whatever they are, to be the students in his class. But this episode just made me think of that. I don't know if I really want to go down that road. Maybe every so often we see the very end or the very beginning of a class, but I don't know if it would really work having an entire episode set around him teaching. Then again, maybe it would. Who am I to say? I'm just kind of putting that question out there for you all. But those are just my thoughts. What are yours? Leave all those down below. Do you like this episode? Do you like the season? Have you given up? Where do you think it's going from here? Leave anything you want down below. Once again, happy Thanksgiving, and until next time.
See you both in hell, suckers!